Hello, I'm Lisa Bonnice, and this is Mind Yourself. Welcome to part 2 of my conversation with karmic astrologer Marguerite Manning. Our topic today is Discover Your Life's Path by Unlocking Your 12th House. Marguerite Manning is a professional astrologer and best-selling author whose groundbreaking work in karmic astrology has helped thousands worldwide live up to their purpose in life by uncovering their soul's past in their birth chart. I've known Marguerite and her work for many years and have a deep respect for what she has to offer, and I'm sure you'll feel the same. If you recall, last week we discussed how to discover your own karmic past to answer the questions, why am I here? What's my life's purpose? We also talked about what Edgar Cayce had to say about karmic astrology and the 12th house. And we also discussed Marguerite's views on Mercury retrograde and how it's not all bad if you know how to look at it. If you missed part 1, you can find a link below. Today, we'll go through a step-by-step explanation of how to interpret your own karmic astrology chart using Marguerite's workbook, Unlocking Your 12th House. Let's go ahead and get started. So by now, everyone will have had time to download their copy of the workbook and their birth chart. And those of you who haven't yet done it can follow along as Marguerite and I talk about unlocking your 12th house and the fascinating information you'll find there. And if you do decide to check it out later, you can always come back and rewatch this if you need help figuring out how to decipher your own chart, because this workbook it takes you through step by step, but maybe you'll have some questions about how to do this. So let's go ahead and go through this, through the keys one at a time. And I've got some screen shares here. So that
and the biggest thing about the workbook too is when you've finished applying the keys to your own chart, then there's the soul work book where you put this down and you actually have the conversation with your soul and you bring up other things that relate to your story that you could never have gotten if you hadn't opened that door to the 12th house and started using these keys to trigger certain things in your unconscious. That's why all 3 sections of the workbook are so important, and the keys are so pivotal, because each key brings you to another part that when you fill out the workbook page of that key, you're forced, I call it soul work, you put down the actual information that you gleaned from the key, but then you're supposed to sit a minute and on an unconscious level respond to certain questions. And that I find very enlightening when we do that. You know?
All right. Well, let's go ahead and start with key 1. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen here, and you will be able to see key 1. You want to go ahead and talk about that just a touch, and then I'll show my birth chart so people can see where exactly we're talking about.
This is the sign, the key, the first key, of course, my jumping off point is the sign on your 12th house cusp. And I give you explicit instructions in the book how to find this sign and where the 12th house is. But there's a glyph there, and the chart tools will show you how to identify what that glyph represents if you're not familiar. But this sign is pivotal. It's the key to your past. And here on Lisa's chart, it's the sign of Leo. Mm-hmm. And this sign is kind of like a summary, an Aesop's fable, I say, if you will, of what went on in your last life. What was the improper programming? Most importantly, what was lost? Now, what was lost for Lisa in her last life, or anyone else with the Leo on the 12th, is the lost stardom, the lost confidence, the lost ability to be somebody. These are people with Leo on the 12th that were supposed to be somebody in the outside world yesterday. They were supposed to be in charge. They were supposed to be an authority figure of great power. And improper programming of being incredibly humiliated led them to believe that they're not capable of this anymore. They're not capable. They don't have the chops for this. And that's what the soul with Leo in the 12th has come in to prove otherwise, that they do have the goods. And they're not going to let this fear, this improper programming from yesterday, people around them that made them believe things were their fault, change, hold them back this time. They are going to be somebody, particularly in the outside world, an authority figure with a voice and with influence. This is the biggest thing. That's why I call it, think of the sun in the sky itself. Someone that people revolve around for their heat, light, and warmth. Someone that actually gives people that kind of self-confidence themselves. But first, they have to overcome what happened in their past. And many times, there's a replay of it in their childhood in this lifetime. And when they see the pattern, they actually feel better. They think, okay, this makes sense. And that's what's very interesting about the sign on your 12th.
Okay. So let's go ahead and go to key 2, which is the 12th house ruler.
The 12th house ruler, this is the sign that, this is the planet or the influence in our solar system, whether it's an asteroid, a planet, or the moon, that rules the sign on your 12th house, not your sun sign. Whatever sign you have on the 12th, if you have Libra on the 12th, then it would be Venus. If you have Aries on the 12th, it will be Mars. Lisa, again, has Leo on the 12th. So the ruler of her 12th is the sun. And we must look to the sun. And she has her sun down there in the 3rd house in Sagittarius. But first of all, just alone, the fact that it is the sun says to me in her previous lifetime, she was an authority figure. She was on the path to being a very powerful authority figure, and she was undermined. That's what the ruler of her 12th tells me. The fact that it's in Sagittarius, that's the next key. But the very fact that what the ruler of your 12th house is very important in telling me, or telling you, I should say, what particular guilt, what kept you in your last lifetime, the personal and pivotal thing about yesterday's guilt that kept you from being what you had to be in your last lifetime.
Okay. So then key 3, the 12th house ruler sign. Let's talk about where we find that.
Okay. In your birth chart, that little glyph right next to Lisa's sun that looks like an arrow, that little glyph, that's wherever the ruler of your 12th is, you'll be able to find the ruler of your 12th with the tools chart. It'll show you what the ruler of your 12th looks like in the chart. And that is the sun in her case. The glyph next to the sun, right above it, is the sign the sun was in. And in the chart tools, you'll see the glyph for all of the planets, and all of the signs. So you'll be able to tell what sign the ruler of your 12th was in at the moment of your birth. And that's different than your sun sign. Whatever sign was on your 12th house has a ruler. That ruler was somewhere in your chart. It wasn't necessarily in your 12th. So that's why it's different than your 12th house sign. It was the ruler of your 12th was somewhere in your chart. If it was Mars, you look for wherever Mars is in your chart, you find the glyph for Mars, and then you look next to Mars to see where this little glyph is next to Mars to determine the sign. In Lisa's case, the ruler of her 12th is Leo. So the sun rules that, as you'll find out when you look in the chart tools, and then you can see Sagittarius right there.
Okay.
That's where her sun sign, the ruler of her 12th, the sign her ruler was in, was Sagittarius.
Okay. All right. So then we're at key 5 now, right? Okay.
Key 4.
Key 4? Okay, sorry.
Your 12th house ruler's house, the house your 12th house in the birth chart. This house identifies, you can find this house by the number inside the very narrow end of that chart.
Mm-hmm.
And right there, Lisa's showing you the number. Close to the hub is the number of every house. And that's where you find the house number. So the ruler of Lisa's 12th was in house 3. And that tells me that this house identifies what undermined you in your last lifetime. What was the impact, the wound and the most impact for Lisa? It came from her siblings, her classmates, and her neighbors, her immediate environment.
Okay. And that's all fully explained in the book. This page that we're showing right here is just
kind of speed course to show you how to find your way around your own chart. The 5th key is the most difficult aspect to your 12th, mathematical aspect to the ruler of your 12th. And that's a little bit trickier to find, but if you look to the ruler of your 12th and up at the pie-shaped diagram, the ruler of your 12th, you find it in the diagram. For Lisa, it's the sun right there. And you follow that line clear across till you see a red square. That tells me that her sun is squaring Pluto. Now, if she had anything else with a red glyph next to it for my charts, but in the workbook, I tell you which aspects are difficult and I give you the symbols for them, and they're only highlighted here. They're squares and oppositions in this particular case, in conjunctions. And there are 3 aspects. They're easy to determine in the chart. And I explain what the glyphs look like. Now, just say you had 3 or 4 different heart aspects. You go to that little number under the square or under the symbol, and that little number tells you how far away it was. So in Lisa's case, the sun was squaring Pluto, and it was 4 degrees. Now, if you have another square and it's 6 degrees, you know this square is the closest. That's how you determine the closest heart aspect. The lowest number next to the heart aspect symbol is the closest one.
All right. Okay. And then you go to
any planets in your 12th house. These are the things that were hijacked in your last lifetime. These are the things, and this is, some people don't have planets in their 12th, and that does not mean anything because there's so much information in all the other keys we were identifying. But what if you do have something in your 12th that says what was hijacked and what you've promised to release in this lifetime, what you promised to reclaim again and start utilizing in this lifetime. In Lisa's case, she'll look up that glyph in her chart in the tools guide, and she'll see that glyph represents the planet Pluto. And then she'll see what it means to have Pluto taken from you in your last lifetime. Pluto represents your power, your trust. That was hijacked from you in your last time. It was held hostage. And now you've promised in this lifetime, which won't be easy, to trust people, but to use your intellectual confidence to overcome that improper programming and trust people with confidence, not just anybody. And that's the nature of, and this also talks about how you were robbed of your power, which is how you lost your trust. You had no personal power. And here's another thing about Pluto in the 12th. Your resources were not used wisely. So my feeling when there's Pluto in the 12th, it wasn't just your personal power of having a voice and standing up for yourself. If you made a lot of money, it was taken from you, it was exploited. If you were very beautiful, you were sexually abused. Whatever your personal resources were, when Pluto is in the 12th, and this is what I explain in the book for each planet, each asteroid, each significant influence in our horoscope, it has a significant meaning when it's in the 12th. This is something that you promised in this lifetime, that you would reclaim your voice and your power and your money. Anything that was, things that didn't, people took what was yours and used it as their own in the last lifetime. And to a part of you let them because you felt you didn't have the power. You were powerless. And you're here in this lifetime to, not on my watch, not again. And if you were a client and I were reading you, I would be saying that's the mantra to your soul. That was yesterday, yesterday's gone.
Okay. And once again, we come back to this being karmic astrology, where
Correct.
I'm learning from. Now, is this specifically my most recent past life, or is this sort of a big overview?
Lisa. See, I knew I'd be that. Well, what's really interesting about that is Edgar Casey had said we've had many lives, and people said to me, Marguerite, I believe I was a soldier in the last life, or I believe I was a doctor in the last life. What I truly believe happens is we've led many lives, and what I get to see is your most recent physical past on the 12th. And I believe the reason for that is when you're graduating from 12th grade and you're going into college, while you may have fond memories of kindergarten and 5th grade and 8th grade, all that's really significant for you going into college is everything you learned in 12th, because that's the culmination of your education. So while you have had other lives, that one is the last point in your evolution where the improper programming stopped you. Where you must, in order to move that to the side, not let that undermine you again, so that the evolution and your evolvement spiritually can move forward. And that's what I think is really very, very interesting, in the sense that, Edgar Casey believed, and of course, his reading his work there at the Association of Research and Enlightenment was incredible. He was talking about Pluto before it was even discovered in our skies in 1930. He was calling it Septius, which is seventh from seven in Latin, but it was the 7th planet from the Earth. Then the minute Pluto was discovered in his readings, he started referring to it as Pluto. So this man was incredible, but he believed that, and this is really interesting, I think you will love this, this theory. Well, it wasn't his theory, it was his belief, because he channeled the spirit Ra that walked with Christ in Jerusalem. So he was when he would go under, he would channel Ra, the spirit. And he said that all of us here are having a physical experience. Our souls our spiritual souls are having a mental experience in the physical world. We're here to manifest physically. This is just one. This is just one venue. On Jupiter, it's about knowledge. We don't see the physical because it's not a physical planet. On Neptune, it's about unconditional love. On Mercury, it's about mentality. So you can say, well, we don't see anything going on those planets. But in that realm, in another type of existence, not an earthly one that we're used to, in a physical one, we have lifetimes there too. And the highest planet in your chart, he believed, is the planet that you just had your last, not your last physical incarnation, that's the 12th house, but your last life is the highest planet in the chart. So when you look at that, the highest planet in the chart, that might be somebody who, if somebody came from Neptune, they're too much about giving and they become victims so many times in this life because that's what was going on at Neptune. There was no ego there. If it was Mars, then they're fighting all the time. And this is what they have to get their land legs wet in this lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's how we evolve.
So how can you tell the highest one in your chart?
Let's look at your chart again. If you can put your chart up again,
Sure.
I'll show it.
Okay, you can see it?
Up there next to the 10th, between the 10th and the 9th house.
10th and 9th,
That's,
okay.
bring that all the way, that's 12 noon. That's
Okay.
the pinnacle of the sky.
Okay.
So in your chart, Lisa, your highest planet, move over a little bit to your right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, to your left.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's that planet, that little red circle with the arrow coming out of it. That's the highest planet in your chart, and that's Mars.
Okay.
You were on the energy planet in your last lifetime, not your last physical life. That was Leo here on this in physical incarnation. That was where you were manipulated. Your last lifetime was spent on Mars. You were for the underdog. You were out there fighting the battles. You could have been it was a warrior type, justice for all, and you had no problem. Your ego was, but you needed that to fight the battles for everybody, including the underdog. Mm-hmm. So when you come now into this planet, which is kind of good chops to have, if you're supposed to push your way out there to the front of the line when it comes to being star power, but still that soul. Never underestimate the power of the soul to try to keep you safe and derail the bus. Because all the soul can see when it's in the driver's seat is the rearview mirror. It's not looking forward. So someone don't want to go there. Lisa, remember what happened the last time? And as much as that Mars energy is left over from the last time, you say, oh yeah, I might want to think twice about that. That doesn't mean that you won't sometimes put your foot in your mouth and get things wrong. And because that's that energy of, you won't allow anybody else to do for you what you can do for yourself. That's the energy of coming from Mars in your last lifetime. That planet, you had to rely on yourself.
Okay.
Does that sound like?
It does. This is all feeling very true in a strange and unknown way. So I'm wondering, this is all really, really valuable information, and I can see how this would be very helpful. What kind of life can we expect to live if we don't ever discover our karma, our karmic astrology? What kind of stuff can happen? Well, I don't want to sound like I'm
the kind of life we can expect. The kind of life is the kind that our parents lived. I mean, they were happy, but my thing is always that knowledge is power. When people talk today, I don't find it coincidental that people talk about our best life and getting the most. That's because I think the age of Aquarius, we're starting to understand the metaphysical end of this existence. It's like anything else. It takes a couple of generations for us to realize why we're really here. And what we're supposed to do here. I know my mom started to get interested in it. I don't think she was but just look at all the indoctrination that they had from their lives. And now we're at a point in our life where we can keep somewhat of an open mind because we can see what didn't work for them. And I believe, like I said to you before, when you know your purpose in life, that's when you start feeling joy. And I say to people all the time, I tell this to my clients, I say, what do you want? And they say, I want to be happy. I say, no, you don't. I say, every single day we're happy. We're sad, we're resentful, we're annoyed. These are all emotions that ebb and flow. We give happiness a bum rap. It's nothing you can sustain 24/7. What I believe we're here for is what Edgar Cayce said, and a lot of metaphysicians that I really respect, and it's joy. Joy is what you experience the day you give birth to your child. Joy is what you experience the day your book is published, the day your song is written, the day you paint that beautiful picture, the day you fix that old car and it starts running again. And I always say to people, don't get me wrong, there are days you want to throw the book, the car, the baby, everything out the window because you're so aggravated with them. But even on those days, it never takes away from the joy of having created them in the first place.
Hmm.
So that's what you will experience when you start living up to your contract with the universe, start overcoming the past, or looking it in the eye and saying, you know what, bring it on. I want joy. You can live a very happy, peaceful, content life, but there won't be joy. And I often think of that quote from Shakespeare. I think it was Mark Antony, when he said, to be thus is nothing, but to be safely thus. So we can be thus, or we can experience joy.
Right.
And some of us do, based on our past life, want to live safely and protected and under the covers. And that's fine. You'll be safe, you'll protect, but there'll be no joy. You'll have fleeting moments of happiness. But I would never have believed, based on the first half of my life, being a teacher and raising my children, that, when you experience the joy of having children, that you would have other things in your life that would bring you that kind of joy. When you start living up to your contract and you notice that you might have challenges, but when you start pursuing or trying to address what went on in your last life and overcome that, things come to you that money can't buy, because you're going out of your comfort zone and you're evolving. Growth never happens in our comfort zone. So I always say to people, whether, it's a book, whether it's sex, whether it's love, whether it's adventure, if you know what's coming, there's nothing exciting about it. There's no growth. But when you don't, that's when at the other side, you've changed.
Right.
You've grown.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes so much sense. And I want to make sure, once again, that people know how to contact you, because in addition to, you've made this very accessible. The price of the book is very affordable, but you also offer, if people do want to work with you directly, a very affordable service. Would you like to talk about that just a bit?
For workbookers, I have a very special price inside the workbook. If they've completed it and they said, I want them to do the work so that they can get that experience. And it's a very, very affordable 20-minute session with me to go over there and give them a lot more insight that maybe they could have gotten on their own. And then I also have special 12th house readings for people that haven't done the workbook or just want to take a deeper dive into their past. But I between the podcasts and the workbooks and the books, everybody has, there are different price points for everybody, because I really love the idea of people being able to understand their own birth chart. And some people don't have the resources to buy a session, but they do have the resources to buy a book, or it doesn't take anything to go listen to the podcasts that are on my website, and they can kind of do it themselves,
All right. Wow, beautiful. We've covered a lot in our time together. Is there anything that we've left out? Well, I'm sure there's a lot of things we've left out, but is there anything we need to cover before we say goodbye?
No, there's not. I really appreciate being with you. I just love being on the other side of a Sagittarian soul that is picking and prying and looking for information and wanting to get the word out there. I just feel it's a great team. I've always loved your energy. So thank you once again for having me.
Well, thank you. In fact, speaking of which, you were one of the first people to write a blurb for Be Careful What You Wish For, back when it came out 10 years ago.
That's on my copy. That's an honor. It's in my bookcase. You had it on the front cover. No, that was an honor to be.
That's right.
I love the book. I think of Twinkle all the time. And I think I even told you back then, it was the millennial version of Bewitched for me. I just really, and my kids grew up on I grew up with Bewitched, but they grew up on the reruns of Bewitched, and they loved it.
I still can't twitch my nose like Samantha without doing it that way.
I don't think any of us can, but Samantha was always one of my heroes.
She was indeed. Wow. Well, once again, Marguerite Manning, MargueriteManning.com. Thank you so much for being here today. I've certainly enjoyed our time together. Thank you.
Me too, Lisa. You're very welcome. Thanks.
All right. Thanks again. And that's it for today. Once again, you can check out Marguerite's website at MargueriteManning.com. You'll find a link below. And go ahead and leave your comments below too. Let's have a conversation. Until next time, I'm Lisa Bonnice. Thanks for watching.